You know, actually an increasing number of young Koreans are going to Japan these days.
According to Korean and Japanese tourism organizations, Koreans accounted for almost 30% of all tourists in Japan in 2023. On the other hand, Japanese tourists also topped the ranking for foreign tourists to South Korea last year. Suddenly, South Korea has gained a lot of popularity in Japan, and vice versa.
And I will discuss the reasons for this a bit later, but it got me thinking about the larger question.
What makes something popular? Why are some things suddenly deemed cool and interesting, while others aren't?
우리 열차는 잠시 후 부덕포 정거장에 도착하겠습니다.
Hi, my name is Kumun, a historian from Canada that is normally based in South Korea. So then, why am I in Tokyo, you ask?
I came here to renew my Korean visa, but why not do some tourism while I'm here, right?
And some tourism I did. I'd like to invite you on a tour of sorts, somewhere between a documentary and a vlog, where we discuss this idea of popularity while visiting the exciting neighborhoods of Asakusa and Akihabara. To better understand the topic at hand, we shall look at two major examples of success: football and rock and roll. These will allow us to identify two distinct reasons that can explain what makes something popular.
So today the most practiced sport in the world is soccer, or rather association football. I know it sounds ridiculous, but have you ever wondered why Frisbee or the Korean game Jegichagi are not the #1 most practiced sports in the world? You know, a lot can be said about how easy and cheap it is to play football. The equipment is cheap and you can play it in the street. But a lot of sports are easy to set up and easy to play, so that alone doesn't really convince me. I'm so hungry right now, but I may be in the worst spot to have like a cheap meal. This is one of the most touristy places of Tokyo. You know, the first reason that can explain the phenomenon of popularity is what I call accumulated collective efforts. The story of football becoming a global sensation is one that is directly linked with the expansion of the British Empire and its effect on culture. The British military helped democratize football.
In the late 1800s and over decades, the British military encouraged the formation of football clubs in regiments across the British colonies for physical exercise and cohesion. The matches held by these clubs eventually attracted local populations, and soon enough, civilians adopted the sport. The efforts of the British military were also supplemented by the creation of leagues, associations, and strict regulations for the sport.
So eventually, even random British citizens started to establish football clubs all over the world, as did Thomas Donahoe and Charles William Miller in Brazil. And we know how much Brazilians loved it over there. So yeah, I think that football is a prime example of what decades of collective accumulated efforts can lead to. I've had one a couple of days ago and now I need to have another one because they're just so fresh and so good. Look at this. There are 3 different flavors. I had custard the other time, so this time I'm gonna go with red bean. So this is taiyaki, right? The tai is a sea bream fish and it symbolizes luck. It is said that if you eat it head first, you are optimistic, and if you eat it starting by the tail, that you are calm and romantic. So let's give it a go. Red bean is so sweet and always reminds me of dates, actually. 이거 그냥 붕어빵이야. So we were talking about the importance of persistent group efforts to make something popular. But sometimes, despite people's best efforts, things just don't seem to move fast enough. This is why the right political timing is also key. Now, whether politics drives culture or culture eventually makes its way into politics has always been a kind of a tricky question. One thing for sure though is that once the political sphere adopts a certain vision and gets behind a cultural phenomenon, it does its best to promote it. For example, since before the end of the Second World War, the USA had recognized the threat that the Soviet Union and communism posed to their interest. So instead of engaging into a full confrontation which might have been destructive, a global competition of influence began, hence the term Cold War.
The United States started funding radio stations, festivals, and cultural exchange programs in order to promote American values in communist-leaning countries, including the Soviet Union. And what better way than rock and roll to represent the idea of freedom?
So thanks to his political backing, this allowed an incredible amount of rock-inspired groups to gain popularity and thrive all over the world for almost 4 decades, until the inevitable fall of the Soviet Union.
So, through the examples of a globally popular sport and an era-defining music genre, we have now established collective efforts and political timing as important building blocks for popularity. But before putting all of the pieces together, let's briefly explore the area.
So this is the Sensoji Temple, which is the oldest temple in Tokyo and is also possibly the most visited religious monument of the world. This temple is made to honor Kannon, the Bodhisattva of mercy. Bodhisattva actually just simply means a person who was about to attain Buddhahood and then decided to stay to help others on the path of Buddhahood. So Kannon, this Bodhisattva, is normally depicted with 11 heads and 1,000 arms to be able to hear everybody and help everybody. So in here, however, in the Sensoji Temple, there is no depiction of this Bodhisattva. It has been sealed apparently a long time ago for 1,500 years in a small lock in the temple. So we cannot see it. So I was walking and I saw this, the Japanese crepe of Asakusa, Kakegawa matcha brûlée with strawberries and walnut. 50 yen discount? Okay. How long will it take? 10 minutes? Oh no. That's the stuff. To be honest, that's the stuff. I wasn't sure about it, but this is amazing. There's cream in it. Look at this. So good.
So good.
So it's slowly getting dark here in Asakusa. So I think I'm gonna move to Akihabara for the night. I've been there for 2 weeks now, waiting for my visa to process. I've met a lot of interesting people and I have a lot of good memories from here, Tokyo. Hopefully I can come back, but soon I'll be back in Korea, and I promise you we have a lot of interesting videos coming up in various spots in Korea. So going back to the first question, how can one explain then the recent surge of mutual cultural interest between Japanese and Koreans? I think a large part of the answer can be explained by the two concepts that we just discussed.
Just like Rome, Korea's cultural wave, also called Hallyu, was not built in one day. The collective accumulated efforts of the whole cultural industry with government backing and a succession of wildly popular groups since the 2000s have shaped the Korean cultural phenomenon of today.
You know, although I'm from Canada, I'm an early victim of this K-pop phenomenon. I discovered the second generation K-pop, as we call it, around 2010, and I've been a fan ever since. K-pop acts such as Dongbang Shingi, Boa, Yuna, Kara, Girls' Generation, and Twice have spent years cultivating the Japanese musical market. Let's not forget about other cultural fields, K-dramas, movies, fashion, or even international acts such as Psy or BTS.
On the other hand, Japanese culture is also flourishing in South Korea. Animations, movies, manga, J-pop, and food are gaining a new following among the young generation through apps like TikTok, while maintaining the older fanbase that Japan spent decades cultivating in South Korea.
Finally, the closer bond, political meetings, and deals struck between Japan and Korea, encouraged by their American ally, gives the perfect political timing to encourage full-on cultural exchange.
Confronted with a flurry of missiles and threats from North Korea and an increasingly dominant China, it seems like this cooperation will only continue to grow stronger in the coming years.
I have this, like, it's called a typecast.
Okay, typecast for villains.
Yeah, I have the voice, the Japanese voice for villains.
That's perfect, man.
Yeah, we're waiting for my artist debut. I also make music.
What about your friend?
Well, he's visiting me.
Visiting?
Yeah.
You have the whole shirt and stuff. That's
Yeah.
nice.
That you can like record the whole explanation.
Yeah, that's why I think it's interesting.
So a lot of these chicks will try to get you to spend a lot of money.
Okay.
This is Manuel, a very interesting person to say the least, that I met in the streets of Akihabara. I will be posting the full version of our interaction in which he discusses the dark side of the maid cafe industry, Japanese education, and his ambition to become a voice actor in Japan. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep an eye out for the video.
So do you think that the two reasons I gave are sufficient to explain the concept of popularity? What other aspects can you think of? Let me know. But one thing for sure, luck is rarely, if ever, the reason for success.
내 품새 춤추다 이시